Hi, this is the Brock and Dave Drilling Podcast. I'm Brock Yorty. My host over here is Dave Bowers. Dave, say hello or something.
How you doing? Excited to be here on a late, for us late, not for everybody that we're talking to, but for us, we're energetic. Usually I have Wilson with me and we're drinking coffee, but Brock and I are all amped up now because we got a great guest today.
We do. We got Captain Jake Fletcher. I've worked with Jake on drilling training projects with the United States Air Force, and he's become a great personal friend, a lot like how I started training with Dave. And we became friends and then started this crazy podcast. Jake is in Las Vegas, Nevada. So generally I get to sleep in, and Dave's computer's on at 7:30, 8 o'clock, and it's Eastern time for me, so it's 9. And then we wanted to bring Jake on, and Jake's 3 hours for me, 2 hours for Dave. And we were like, Jake, we want to start at 9 Central. And he goes, it's Saturday, guys. Say something about yourself, Jake.
Oh, just happy to be here. Chat. It's always a pleasure to chat with you guys and talk about drilling or whatever our conversation leads us to. So I am here enjoying my coffee. So somebody's getting energetic at the moment.
Well, good. So it's Saturday and it's not 5 o'clock for any of us. So we'll get started this week. We're going to talk about adaptive leadership. And, Jake is less than 30 in this drilling industry, and I just became an adult in this industry at 40. And, Dave is the old man. What are you, like 64, Dave?
Well, I'm not quite there yet. 53 as we speak. You could be listening to this later. I could be older then, but right now, 53.
And so we all three have different perspectives on, being in the field, working with men and women, and what we got to do. Drilling is a system, and the system only works if we're all working together for a goal. And that's why in the past we've talked about outlining what we need done on a project, what's going to happen next, how do we take a new guy, new gal to helper, assistant, driller to supervisor, because somewhere along the way in our tribe, we lose focus on how we continue to develop and adapt. And Jake is the one that him and I were talking, and Jake goes, well, you have to use adaptive leadership. And it always fascinated me because I met Jake. He was a lieutenant, got promoted to captain. He's in drilling for the Air Force. And he was pretty damn young for the rest of the men that he was working with. So Jake, tell me, where did adaptive leadership come from?
As with most things that you kind of develop as a person, you develop them at a young age. And I didn't really know it at the time, but as the captain of the high school baseball team, I had a variety of different pitchers on the team. And so in sports, you get into situations that are tough, and I had to learn, I had to spend time with these guys outside of baseball and learn how to communicate and adapt myself to them so that when they were in a tough situation, I could go out there and know how to communicate with them to get them to achieve, what we wanted to achieve on the field. And so fast forward into my time in the Air Force, it just kind of followed me and kind of clicked that, in order to maximize the troops that I was given responsibility for, to maximize their potential, to me, it was a better approach to adapt myself to them rather than ask them to adapt to the things that I wanted and to my style of doing things.
Dave, I've watched you, change tactics, adapt, in the field on the project we did there at the 150 facility that the geothermal holes had to replace, and at the training facility. How do you approach it?
it's all about your audience. Whoever you're talking to, whether they're, I deal with a lot of really relatively young kids. I deal with some older people. Someone that comes in is in their 30s or 40s, if they're starting out, is still in the same spot, but they have some different life experiences. So you need to find what relates to them. And we talked about being the grown up in this industry. We mentioned that a little bit, right? That you finally reach grown up. Well, I asked my dad when he was probably 75, 76 at the time. And I asked him, when do you feel like a grown up? And he said, I don't know. I haven't got there yet. And so it's really not that. It's what kind of maturity does someone have? And maturity and age are different things. And then how can you relate to the life experiences of that person? That's what adaptive leadership is. We were talking before, people learn differently, people act differently. If you can find their background and what motivates them, and that's a big part of adaptive leadership, right? How do I motivate this person and get them to want to do whatever we're asking them to do? In this case, maybe they want to become that next step, right? They're going from where they're at to the next step, a little more responsibility as a driller's assistant, or step on the platform by themselves. When we're doing that, the only way to do it is to get them to self-motivate. You can't drag someone along unless they want to come with you. And adaptive leadership is all about trying to find what that motivation is. As a trainer, when I'm talking to first-year apprentices, I have to act differently necessarily than maybe when we have Tom Howe come in and we have geologists and hydrologists. One, their experience level is a different thing. Two, their background is different, right? They've been in academia and they're trying to learn the field. An apprentice, whether they're first year, third year, fourth year, whatever, I always find out who have they been working with, what projects have they been on. They have to meet the same goals for me, but I can pull off of what they've been doing. If they've been out on a foundation rig the whole time, it's going to be a longer road on the water well side. If they've been doing water well stuff and we need to talk about geotechnical stuff, I may have to circle back stuff I taught them years ago because they haven't been putting it in practice and that's really what adaptive is about, finding what motivates someone else and making sure you include that. I think Jake put it great. Adapt to them, because it doesn't matter what I want. My goal is to elevate them. So too many people make the mistake of, well, I did good at whatever. Maybe I'm the best driller at the company. I'm the best whatever. My approach may not be the approach that someone else needs to take. So try to find that.
So there's two perspectives here, that we have to switch hats, right? And all three of us have trained together, where the goal is at the end of the day to make sure they have as much knowledge as possible so that when they're in the field, they can overcome what unforeseen circumstance is going to happen, because drilling is discovering the unknown. We've all agreed that, even if we've drilled in that area before, there's always going to be an X variable that is just going to tweak us a little bit, and then there's projects where leadership is about completing the goal safely, effectively and profitable, and so when we get into those situations where we have a direct report that doesn't make a good decision or needs some motivation, that's when it changes, right? So it's when everything is teaching and they're students, we know where the cultivation's coming from. And then we get on to the actual project, and we've all three been there. Now it's like we have some time to coach, manipulate, change things, but at the same time, we have a timeline, and we have people above us saying, this is how much time we have. Where are we going to go? Second aspect I want to throw out right there, the whole age aspect. Drilling is a self-taught field application, industry. Just like you said with Tom Howe and academia, and we should really get Tom on in the next few weeks, all four of us, and talk about that. The field warrants experience of days on jobs to how capable are you of adapting this project? How capable are you of leadership? So when I joke about I'm finally 40, so I guess I'm an adult in this industry, it's so often, when I was a field rep, when I was a representative for an equipment company, it was, I'm here, you're my customer, I'm here to support you, not call you a dumbass. And when I'm leading the team and I have another driller who says, I've been in this industry longer than you've been alive, Brock, that's when that adaptive leadership shifts for me. Or I don't know how many times I've gotten the question, well, yeah, Brock, sure, you grew up in a family business, but, you've only been on this side of the business for 15 years. And before that, it was with your daddy, there's this weird, we can't just say, I understand the fundamentals, I know how to execute, let's do these jobs together. There's always been, because of the culture of our industry, somebody that's going to go, well, I've drilled a bigger hole than you. Or, you know what, this is Nevada, Brock. How can you solve drilling problems here? You grew up drilling in West Michigan. And that's that other aspect of how do you get through? Because you know what? With Bayroid and the stuff that I've gotten to do, I'm drilling in the Southeast right now in Charleston, South Carolina, and near Tampa, and that's radically different drilling than what was the Midwest, or what I've been with Jake in Nevada, or the stuff that I've even seen from the backyard of Wilmington to when we went up to Sunnyside. Was it Sunnyside? What was the
up north?
When we went and did those geothermals for the Union Hall. Countryside.
Yeah.
Sunnyside is the daycare in Toy Story 2.
Well, yeah, you had me confused. I didn't see Toy Story 2.
See, that's why I'm still a kid.
Yeah. But, some of this is what we're going to get, especially, Jake is charged with guys to bring along. So he winds up with a team that he gets to develop. As we go around and you run into those guys, when I was still in the field, they would send me to problem jobs throughout the U.S. And that exact thing that you heard, Brock, well, you might know about drilling in Chicago, but you don't know about drilling fill in wherever you're at, right? Drilling is drilling. And, if you're creative and you work hard, you can get through it. And every single person that ever said that to me, within, I don't know, a couple weeks of helping them fix with their problem going on, or sometimes I might be a little bit of a bull. That drillitude comes out sometimes. Sometimes moving them to the side and showing how I want this done. And again, it's back to what's going to motivate them. Originally, nothing's going to motivate them. They put the wall up. You try to help them on. Here's what I want you to do. Well, sometimes I would take over the rig and run it for 6, 8 hours and get them through whatever. Or in one instance, I hired a bunch of guys and they're like, well, we don't have the money for that. I said, we don't have the money to lose the amount of money we're losing daily here. So I wound up hiring guys. We could not control mud loss. I went to the local laborers hall, and this wasn't even a union job. I hired every laborer I could get to do nothing but mix mud and stay ahead of the rigs. That was their whole job. I don't care if the rig needs it, you're mixing. I delivered them the stuff, and they got through the job. And every person that had ever said that to me wound up calling me for advice later on in their career, later on in our relationship, because they maybe didn't like me, but they saw, okay, he's going to try to find the right solution for the job. And sometimes this is the other thing, know what you don't know. If I don't know the right solution, I'll phone a friend. I could call Jake, I could call you, I could call 100 other people that I know that may have run into this, because I only know what I know. And if it's still beating me, somebody else can fix it. It's only dirt or it's only steel. We can't let it outsmart us.
So to that point, switching gears, Jake finds himself on a project in Northern Nevada where you can't phone friends, right? Because did you have cell service?
Are you thinking about the airfield project?
Yeah.
Yeah. So while you guys are talking about this, Dave, what you were talking about, my entire career in the Air Force, I have run into, your first day as a lieutenant, you walk in and every senior sergeant says, great, here comes another idiot. It's just a running joke about lieutenants when they come in the military, because you come in and immediately, you outrank people who have been doing this their entire lives. So, it's a lot of leadership, and being an officer in the Air Force is sink or swim, and I think what set me up for success in the civil engineering career field was growing up around people who worked in construction and worked in labor jobs, because I started to understand from a young age the culture of the people that do this kind of work. And it allowed me to understand how to communicate with them. But going back to that job here in Nevada, leading up to it, every person that had done another airfield project, I'm not going to name names or say where, but all of those people said, you have to do it this way. And, we did it this way here. And, oh, you'll never, this is the timeline. We couldn't get it done in that timeline. You'll never get it done. And, what's interesting is that, when they talk about leading teams, they say, you don't want to, pass that information along to the team. Well, when someone tells me that I can't do something, it's motivating to me. It doesn't piss me off. It doesn't make me say, well, I'm going to give up. To me, it's okay. You have your perspective. I'm going to go out here and I'm going to do it, because that's just, I grew up as an athlete, and I was always the smallest guy on the team, and I was going to go out and prove that I could play just as good as anybody else. So I use that with the team, and that, adaptive leadership is, you can break it down to working with individual people, but also it's how you deliver the goal and the message to motivate a group of people together. And so when we got out on that job, I said, you know what? I said, everybody back in the unit thinks that we can't do this, and I use that as a foundation to build the motivation, because, I got together with the sergeant that I had on the job, and I said, okay, we're going to work 6/12s, that's a tough schedule. And you can legally do that in the military, because it's, it's kind of, you set your own schedule, and it is what it is. And so I had to think, how can I get it? You're not always going to get everybody to buy in to what you want to do. It's just part of team dynamics. Not everybody's going to buy in, but if you can get, 90% or a large majority of the team to buy in, then most of the time those people who don't buy in at the beginning end up just falling into place and doing what they can. So I use that as motivation. I said, hey, look, nobody thinks that we can do this. And people started buying in. They said, okay, well, I had a crew of people who had never paved asphalt before in their lives. They had never run a milling machine. They had never done any of the tasks that we had done. So everybody said, yeah, you guys might get half of this job done. And I said, well, that's a goal. But what was interesting for me as the team leader, in the back of my mind, I had an idea of where we might get, as I'm pushing people towards the goal. We want to finish this job. And at each milestone, these guys, they surprised me. I was like, wow, they really bought into this idea. And I have really, as a team leader, I have adapted and led them to buy into this goal. And, whether it was me getting out there on a piece of equipment, I also, the other piece is leading from the front. I didn't just sit back and watch these guys do all this work, whether it was getting on a piece of equipment and helping out, or going and driving 45 minutes into town on a Friday to buy everybody, beer for after work. Whatever little gesture you can do as a leader, that's, it's just, I don't know. To me, it's a lot of fun. It's a fun job to lead a team and to, sorry, twirling my pen, Dave. I'm a hand gesture kind of guy, so.
No, hand gestures are fine. Your pen was like in the camera.
Oh, sorry.
No, I didn't want to derail you though.
No, I mean, and so, what ended up happening was, they gave us a year to do this job. They said, okay, we're going to shut down for a year. And we finished tearing up and repaving this airfield in 4 months. And they were landing planes on that airfield within 4 months of the date that it was shut down. And I walked back into the unit and I had my chest out a little bit to everybody that kind of told me I couldn't do it and that my team couldn't do it.
And I think that's a common motivator. Just enjoy. Hey, they say this can't be done. Really. And people who succeed in not just drilling and construction are the guys who go, really, it can't, can it? And it's that. Now, sometimes there are things they tell you can't be done that, guess what? You can't get done. But, if it's reasonable, I think that's a common motivator.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Dave.
No, it's knowing when that makes sense to use to motivate something, and when it doesn't make sense, because truly you look at it and you go, let's not set expectations to where they can't meet it.
I was going to say it's about realistic expectations, and that was a problem I had with a lot of projects that came up in the last couple of years was, can it be done? Yes, but is the expectation of how and when it can be done, is it realistic? And a lot of times the answer was no.
So there's two beautiful points that have just been made in good leadership, as we're adapting to knowing, what our people need. What they need milestones. You said milestones, Jake. Dave talked about, getting up on the rig and getting through that problem and showing it's the milestones. And I don't think we do enough of that in the drilling culture of saying today's goal is, because we have this idea that we're just going to try to do as much as possible. Today's goal is to do as much as possible, today's goal is to set up effectively, safely, get drilling, and know that this job should take 2.5, maybe 3 days, depending on penetration rates. And that's how we get there, right? We show the milestones and the expectations and understand that adapting to what's going to happen on the job, and then letting our entire team know we should hit water at 250 feet. Static's going to be 90. The more that we we give our entire team, the faster we can react to catastrophic incidents, the faster we get to react to mud loss. Just like Dave said, those guys showed up. Their job was to mix mud in order to maintain that job. That was the solution to get the job back on track. And we're not building a house. You know, I'm sure coming from the drilling unit, and obviously the Red Horse, you guys do everything. You know, and even when you deploy, you could deploy for water well and end up, you know, doing something else. The uniqueness of building an airfield, you know, it's visual, right? Like each day we see, yeah. And in drilling, the only thing we see is that there's less pipe in the rack.
Yeah, you know, milestones are, you know, to me, they're key. You know, kind of touching on something that you said, Brock, is, you know, I think an important part of team leadership is cueing the team in on some of the bigger picture, you know, not so much that they get overloaded by all of the details because, you know, from a leadership perspective, there's a lot going on, but that's something I always tried to do because, you know, as we mentioned earlier, as people are making steps in their career path, keying them in on that bigger picture piece by piece is what allows them to understand what they're progressing towards, not only on a job, but in their career or whatever it is they're pursuing. You know, so I had a lot of super young guys on that team. I would break out the drawings and I would take them out there and I would flip through the design of the airfield and say, hey, you know, this is my job. This is what I look at. This is what you're doing and why you're doing it. You know, this is why you're cutting these slopes and doing these things this way, because this is how it was designed, you know? And so for them to start to see that and put that together, that, hey, I'm not just an equipment operator. Hey, I'm not just, you know, a driller helper. This is what we're progressing towards, is understanding that bigger picture and, you know, setting those specific milestones. I never went out on that job and said, okay, today we're going to go as far as we can go. Every day it was, this is today's milestone, you know, and a lot of days the guys would beat it. They would get out there and say, well, it's before lunch and we're already most of the way through your milestone. So we're just going to keep going.
Well, I like to call that sharing vision, right? Because sharing vision, there's not always a milestone for that day. But if someone understands what vision we have for, you're the owner of the company and you've got a sales guy working for you, or you're the driller and you got a helper working for you, if you share your vision for them, it helps motivate them. Right? I have some gentlemen that work under me right now. I have one in particular that I said, I see in the next 5, 6 years, whatever, you're doing my job. I don't know that I'm going to retire. I don't know that I'm for sure any of that stuff, but what his background is, what his intelligence is, how he approaches stuff, he should be doing my job. He really should be. And so I've told him that. From now, he's got some experience, some more teaching to do, some qualifications to get, some other things, and I'm leading him towards those things. I don't know where I'm going to be in that time. It's not my job to decide whether I'm standing in his way. It's the people who we work for. But I want, when I step out, whether it be because I decided that I was done and decided to retire or decided to go work for somebody else, I don't want anyone to say I didn't prep it for when I do make that move. It should be seamless, whether it was my choice or someone else's.
You know what we say, what we always said in the Air Force was you train the person that's going to take your place. That's what you do. The people, you know, at least from my perspective, is you train your replacement. You know, you set someone else up to do a job better than you, you know?
And so training your replacement falls on deaf ears. And in this industry, back to the how can I train my replacement when I have 31 days of experience and he's got 28 or she's got 27, right? And it is very important that we should be thinking about how can they do my job. And so often in drilling, the driller, the supervisor goes, well, if I give it all to them, they'll have my job. Where am I supposed to go? And I have always believed if I give every bit of knowledge to them in the field, in the office, in a classroom, I get to learn the next thing because I'm not going to be replaced. I'm going to be able to take everything that was in here right now, push it out so I don't have to go back to that, so I can be somewhere else doing something else. You know, and that's ironically because anybody that knows me that from 26 to 40, I've had 6 different careers, you know, different companies that I've worked for. And there's moments where I'm like, I've plateaued. I don't want to be your drill supervisor for the rest of my life, you know, and it's all right. Where's the next challenge? Who wants to grow with me? And that's with the milestones and training your replacement, you know, with our age gap that we have in this industry right now, giving somebody purpose on what the future is, from if it's we hit the milestone at noon or it's in 11 months, you're going to be on this job by yourself with somebody else. And it's going to be your responsibility to push that information on. And Dave, that's when you go from apprentice to first, second, third year, at what point do you start trying to insert more leadership aspects? Like, instead of, all right, guys, this is what we're going to do today, you know, okay, Brian, you have the Versa drill and you have these 2 guys. This is what needs to be done. How do you do that? What's the secret?
Usually where we try to do stuff like that is just most of the time it'll be, I have a third year and some first years there, or you have a second year and first years there, or you have a first year that's showing talent that you're like, wow, let's see what can we push them along. It's called teach back. It's stuff that you've give to them. They will learn way more about what they already know and how much they know, and you'll learn about their approach to things by having them teach back or having them guide somebody. It's no different on any part of the job. And the funny thing is, how often do these podcasts, no matter what topic we start, we come back to this, right? Motivation, how do you help somebody along? And to your earlier point, I wanted to say that part of that is why you don't worry about your replacement is because you're trying to grow the company. Rising water raises all boats. And if it's not the company, the industry. Because if we raise the industry up, even if I'm ever done with this company, there's somewhere else that will want my expertise. It's that simple. But back to that, you give somebody the opportunity to lead, the opportunity to help somebody who's not at their level yet. And that's how you know how they're progressing, where that maturity is. And I've seen that maturity in some very young guys. And I've seen that maturity take a long time to develop with some older guys. You can't, there's no, hey, at 4th year, they lead this. Well, to get to 4th year, they're going to have to display that leadership. And that's the key with what we're doing. You need to meet the milestones to get to that next level. If you don't meet the milestones, and part of those milestones are that I can lead a job, I can plan a job from beginning to end. I'm not saying that they're going to be, they're going out and they should take over your company, because I don't necessarily know how you're doing, what you're doing, because we cover all aspects of drilling. But that's what I'm after. Do you display a little bit of leadership? Do you understand the basics of drilling, no matter what type of drilling it is? And do you show the work ethic to succeed at it? And those three things are the three legs of our stool. We take any of those three away, don't sit on that stool, it's going to fall over. And that's really what we're after. I think it's what we're after in all companies and all kind of work. It doesn't matter what it is. That is what we need.
What's crazy is both of you come from a structured hierarchy for the drilling industry, where we are a small community. That's why expertise will always have a job in experience, regardless if you're a great performer or you're knowledgeable but you're a turd. You will find another rig, you will find another company, because discovering the unknown takes insight. What's crazy is we think all three of us come from this industry, but from different perspectives. Of you, Dave, get to have apprentice, pre-apprentice, apprentice, first year on, that have milestones set, right? Hey guys, did you go get your CDLs? That type of stuff, right? Jake, his team has, what happens if you don't progress, Jake, in the Air Force?
Eventually you're told thanks for your service.
Right. And that's why I see your friends and colleagues that are sergeants, constantly working from that. And you obviously came in from OCS, and you had this spot, but you didn't stay there, and it's and we need that in the civilian world. There should be a better level, right? For that carrot, for that motivation.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Dave. No, you got it, Dave.
Here's what I'm going to say, and think about it a little differently. It's something that's been being pushed lately. How many places are now doing apprenticeship? And I'm not talking about my program. They want to use my program, I'm thrilled. But just in general, that structure that you're talking about for a company, if the company is willing to put the work in to structure it and go to the U.S. Department of Labor and say, these are the milestones, here's how we're going to try to meet them, they can get a apprenticeship for their company independent of what I do. Now, I prefer them use me, because I think that, it's easier to have something's already done, and I think we do a pretty damn good job. Or they use a guy that came through Jake's that went through the military when they hire him. But the thing is, if they have that structure and they have a pay structure that goes with it, that shows that first day, we're offering a career, and we come back to this all the time too, right? Offer a career, don't offer a job. When I started in this industry, I was offered a job. I was too tenacious to not make it a career. That's where when you, Brock, started in this with your dad, you weren't offered a career other than because you had said, nope, that's my older brother, I'm not doing that, I'm going to go do this. And that summer working with your dad, somehow the switch turned in your head and you decided it was a career. We're asking somebody, and those farm kids that they talk about, they don't really exist that often anymore. They step in and you got somebody, no matter where they're from, if that day one you're saying this is an apprenticeship, these are the things you're going to meet, here's what your pay structure is going to be, and we want you to succeed until you retire. Now,
so,
we've got something.
oh,
No, go ahead.
So, that's what I like about this field is, you go on and you look at, posts for drilling jobs anywhere, and it says, this is probably the only career field in all of the construction and work that I've ever crossed paths with that, you see in a job post, no experience needed, no prior experience in this necessary. And I think, the industry does a good job of attracting people and communicating that. But I think it goes back to, circles back to that adaptive leadership. And Brock talks about this all the time. There are plenty of people my age who are quality workers who are looking for careers, people who want to contribute somewhere. It's just a matter of adapting yourself to communicate the right way to those people. I get it. My generation of people that are in the workforce are much different than, Brock's generation or your generation, Dave. But I think it's all about coming back to that adaptive piece and learning how to communicate with those people, because I know a lot of really great people that, whether I went to school with them or served with them, that are quality people that could be great in the drilling industry, hardworking people that could fit into any number of positions. It's just a matter of communicating to them in that and leading them in that way that gets through to them.
So the other part of adaptive leadership that we've touched on, and obviously recruitment comes back because you need people to lead. And I want to end on talking about your experiences of applying for some drilling jobs, Jake. But before we get there, so we give them the milestone. We talk about goals. We give them all the information. We're training our replacement. But somehow we as an industry don't work enough on knowing where they're coming from. If it's from a mental health standpoint, or, because we are a rough and tough industry and we got to drill today. Whatever you have going on stays in the pickup truck, and we're drilling today. Leave your phone. I can't have you on your phone. All of those aspects. But a big piece of adaptive leadership is taking the time to have the empathy to know what's going on. Because we can have daily goals and we can have milestones and we can say how the job's supposed to go. But that Thursday night softball tournament, that drilling, because how often does drilling say, you're not starting your holiday weekend when you thought, or you're not going to make it home in time for that. That's the piece, because we work hard to play hard, right? And when that employee's attitude changes at 3:55, when he realizes that he won't be off this job site by 5 to be, in his softball uniform, where that's because, right, sports and getting to have that camaraderie is the reason we get paychecks, right? And knowing where somebody is coming from or what else drives them is very important to how we lead.
Well, and I think that comes back to relationships, because the fact is, you still aren't going to get off that job. No matter what is going on, that job is still going to continue. You won't get off this time. You're going to be, but if you have the right relationship that you make, when you can, you go, hey, you know what? I know you got this. We're going to plan around it, or if you can do that just a little bit, it goes a long way towards those times where you can't, hey man, we're screwed. Yeah, I get it. You know, I've been there. You've been there. Everybody's been there. That hey, you know what? We're setting long stream today, and once we start and we start cementing, that's it. We're not done until it's done. No matter what goes wrong, we need to continue, right? And everybody shows up. Oh man, I hate cement day. Okay, great. But if you've been doing the things we're talking about and you've been flexible and understanding where you can be, I think those days go by a lot better. But in order to do that, you're right. You have to learn the people working for you, learn what motivates them, learn it might be the guy that's got softball. And, you know, myself, I'd be like, softball, that's kind of a BS. But if that's what he lives to do, make sure that when you make sure that he can do it. When you get someone who's a newly married or a new parent or something, you make a lot more concession where you can to say, hey, you know what? Go home with go be with your wife. I have a guy I work with right now that during the pandemic, when it first started, we were off for a month, and I said, hey, we're going to be off for a while. What do you want me to take my computer home, take this? And he said, I don't want you to do a damn thing. When's the last time you spent time with your wife? That was his, he goes, go actually be with your family right now. We're not going to be off that long, and we'll eventually, you're going to be back to where you don't have time. You're going to be busy, do all those things. So that's the way he framed it. And it made it a little easier to go home and not come to work for a while. And, we started this during that period of time. I wouldn't have started this if that time I wasn't open, this wouldn't have came up because we would have been too busy to think about it. So I think that goes a long way. Drilling's not going to change. There's going to be those days, those times where you can't be flexible. This is what it is. But if you have empathy and if you learn a little bit about who you work for or with, you can give them the opportunity to go try. I try to do that. I don't know how good I am at it, but that's all you can do is put an effort. That's my take on it anyway.
It's very important as the leader. And I'm talking to the driller, the owner of the company, the person that is most influential to this adaptive leadership. It is very important to know what the win has to be. And because we've done such a poor job or have executed as a jackass leader, not an adaptive leader, making it to that softball game or that high school football game for the son, or understanding that we just don't start a job at noon on a Friday, or we look at those, and if there's a Thursday night softball game, we go, all right, Tyler, I get it. This is what drives you. We're probably going to have to work 8 to noon on Saturday to make up for it. And so we give and take to those. But if you work at Taco Bell, you work your 8-hour shift. If you become a doctor, you like our industry in adapting to leadership and the people we want, we've basically we've done a poor job of saying, it's drilling. You know what? Be lucky you got 90 hours this week, because that guy at Taco Bell was only allowed to work 38 because he can't go over and go into overtime or that type of stuff. And our poor execution shouldn't be our employees' punishment.
Well,
But
I think
if, I'm sorry, Dave, just one thing. But if the poor execution, bad choice came from the team altogether, and this is why we're cementing a string at 4:30 on a Thursday night or something like that, then we all take it as the team and we finish as the team. And the adaptive leader has to look everybody in the eye and go, this isn't how it has to happen every time. This is what I need out of you today. Tyler, the next softball game, I'll guarantee that you're off by 2:00. Even if I got to make sure you're sorting bolts and sweeping the shop and doing preventative maintenance at the shop as we leave. But that's, isn't it that poor choice of, I can't tell you how the next job's going to go, or I can't tell you how the schedule is going to be, that's not what they signed up for. Right?
Well, I got a question for Jake, and I think I know how it'll come down on this, but I think what you're really talking about here is the difference between leadership and command. Command and leadership are not the same thing. And that, I think, is what you're talking about here. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, going back to that job last summer, I made it a point every night that I was the last person off of we lived on the job site. I was the last person sitting in my little gator and watching as whatever the last task was, I was the last person. I was always, Colin Powell, great military leader. He had this saying that leaders eat last. And it's something that my grandfather did when I was a kid. My grandfather never ate a meal until all of us had a plate and we were full. He would sit there and watch us eat. And so it's just a leadership philosophy that I've always bought into, is that, you put the people first, because, what, in my mind, what Brock was getting at is that you can't forget that it's human beings doing this work. They're not just numbers on a piece of paper. And I've worked for people who have made me feel like that. I've worked for commanders who command but not lead, and they will command that you do what they want and make you feel like you are just I used to say I feel just like a pawn on their chessboard. That's pretty much what they will make you feel like. You're just another piece like anybody else. And that's one way to go about doing your business, whatever it is. But is it the most effective? Not in my opinion,
And, Dave, yeah, it is command versus, field leadership. But isn't our industry more of the owner, command, leader, the person that's on site pulling the levers, than it is? Mind you, you live in the third largest city in the country, just outside of it, that has, you're one of the biggest operators unions in the country that has so much happening, right? There is such, when we get to the big cities, there are these huge infrastructures and the different hierarchies. But isn't that the dynamic of drilling? That is, how often is it a 5-employee company versus a 45-employee company?
Well, and that's there has to be a command structure, but the commander has to demonstrate leadership. Leadership takes input from the entire team, whether it's a 2-man team, 3-man team, 100-man team, takes what they value into account or what they think is going on, because more eyes are better, right? So like Jake said, I could be the owner of the company and command you, this is how you're going to do this. If I'm the driller and he's not on the job, if he's unwilling to hear, hey man, that you're going to have problems because of this, that company's not going to wind up surviving very long. or thriving. It may survive, maybe it won't thrive. But the successful companies, think of Jeff Williams and those guys that are successful. They are certainly in charge of their company. Their command, they have a command structure. I guarantee their driller isn't out there deciding what the company, which direction they're going to go, but they know how to demonstrate leadership. And they make sure everyone feels that they have their back. I've talked about Dominic Sinabazi before, right? Same kind of thing. I felt he had my back. We weren't friendly, right? I worked for a guy named Mike Rourke's that early on, God rest his soul, early on, I really thought he was a little bit of a cartoon character because he was, he pounded his chest a lot. And then we came to something that I said, hey, this isn't going to work. If you do it this way, it's not going to work. He says, I think it will. And so do it my way. I'm in charge. But if it doesn't go the way that you said, that's on me. And I happen to be right. It went bad. It went exactly the way I thought it would go. And when the person above who was paying for the project came down and started bitching, Mike did say, that was my decision. That was on me. And I thought, you know what? He was certainly in command. He was a Marine by, his whole life. He was a retired Marine. He was going to be in command. But then he displayed leadership and made sure everyone knew he had your back, regardless of what it was. And that's really what it comes down to, right? A leader leads. A leader could be a helper, but his attitude, the way he does things, the way he can act as a leader. Command is something completely different. It's a structure, right? Command is, hey, I'm the owner, I'm the craft foreman, I'm the tool pusher, I'm the driller. That's command structure. But leadership, any of those people can be a leader. And even if maybe that owner isn't that way, but if there's one of those guys in that buffer behind it who's a good leader, because the owner put him in that position, he will be able to take leadership role and liaison between those two and make things better. And that's, that was kind of my point with that whole command versus leadership.
I completely agree. One aspect of that I think is important and needs to be emphasized is it's top down, right? So command is going to demonstrate the leadership that we should have, the culture we should have, the way people should be treated. And that's very important in this self-taught tribal industry, that we consider that. And I've met great leaders and great commanders, and I've met turds. And
if you
go ahead, Jake.
Sorry, go ahead.
No.
So a thought kind of just popped into my head. If you think about, from a military standpoint, to take command is actually a noun. It's a thing. When a unit changes commanding officers, that officer physically takes a flag and is taking command of that unit. Leadership is a trait, it's a living thing, and it's a characteristic of the person that is in command. So are there, there's a lot of ways to look at those two words. I mean, you could have a whole discussion on the differences and similarities of those two words in itself. I like what Dave said about structure. The chain of command is what it's called in the military. That's what the structure is called. But there, as far as leadership goes, I think there are times, where that directive command type leader or that trait is necessary. To me, it always comes back to safety. If there's a potential for on a job site, especially in construction or drilling, I have stepped outside of adaptive leadership to be directed to say, hey, this is what we're doing, and you're going to listen because it's a matter of safety. But, that's kind of the thought that just popped into my head about that.
Well, Jake, you're the only one that's gone through officer school, so you graduated college. Were you in ROTC beforehand or what? Yeah.
Yeah. So I did ROTC in high school. And then I had an instructor that said, hey, you might think about applying to do ROTC in college and applying to the Air Force Academy. And I ended up getting a scholarship from the Air Force to go to University of Delaware, where I studied engineering. So my 4 years, well, go ahead.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just, I spent my college career, in addition to studying engineering, learning leadership.
And then you got into officer candidate school, which was nothing but leadership, right? Like you're the only one that's truly studied, leadership.
Well, my officer training was throughout college. So once I graduated, I took actual classes that were, structured to teach me how to be an officer, or how they thought I should be an officer. But yeah, it's, there's a lot of different perspectives on leadership. One of the things that I think Dave was talking about, it was, you don't have to be the leader of the team to lead. John Maxwell wrote a book called 360-Degree Leadership. And it's a good comment, especially for officers that are lieutenants and captains. It's something we talk about is, how do I lead if I'm not given responsibility for troops? Like if I'm not put in command of a team of troops, how do I lead without, he talks about leading from the middle of an organization. If you're in the middle of a team, let's say you're a helper or whatever, how you can still lead. There are ways to do it, but how do you do it? Everybody has the opportunity to be a leader.
I agree, and we should be developing everybody to be leaders. And I see that quote or that meme go through that leadership is not a title, and it's a state of mind, or all of those different things. But at the end of the day, there is one individual that has to take responsibility for the whole entire situation, and is the responsibility because it's their bank account that is continuing to pay that $8,000 a month rig payment, or it's their responsibility because they report to the shareholders, or they report to senior management. There's so many stakes to that. And we want, I want good decision makers that want to collaborate. I don't really care about the leadership aspect as much as I want good decisions made by a collaboration.
Well, you're describing leadership right there, right? That's part of it. Leadership is learning to make those good decisions and taking all stakeholders, what they believe into account, or what they see into account. That's leadership.
Right. I agree there. It's just the fact that at the end of the day, there's one individual that's going to have to take full accountability for the actions, if that's the licensed person or whatnot, and how do you, when I got to the company I'm working with right now in the Southeast, they had a pecking order, like an elementary schoolyard. And that pecking order was, I've been here more years than you. So the driller would tell the drilling assistant to go get 4 bags of quick gel. And the drilling assistant would turn to the helper and say, go get 4 bags of quick gel. And the helper that had been there 4 years instead of 3 years would look at the 3-year guy that was already over, shoveling the pit, washing off the shaker screens, and would say, hey, Jesse, go get 4 bags of quick gel. And I came out on the site and I went, what Mickey Mouse BS is this? You were told to go get gel. And we just stopped the situation because that type of, and that's drilling culture, right? Right. So, we're simplifying it and going, well, that's leadership, guys, but if it was better, and this is where I wanted to shift gears. Jake, you sent out some emails, so Jake has been on some other podcasts with us and has done Ask Brock, and he's one of my best friends in the world. And he retired out of active duty Air Force to go be part of the drilling industry. He was 820 Red Horse, ran a 50K solids control units, a 7.5 by 10 mud pump, 1350 compressors, got a full suite of great experience in the Western United States in drilling. And then Jake, you transitioned into Air Reserves, and Jake led part of the 820 Red Horse drilling program that brought in all the rest of the drillers. And worked at that whole, this is what the plan is. So Jake, you went out and you at least talked to some people about wanting to be. You love this industry. Am I wrong to say that? Or
no? Thanks to you. It's to me, it's my degree background is in water. It's environmental engineering with concentration specifically in water and resources. And when I graduated from college, I was like, I'm going to go in the Air Force. I'm going to do construction. When am I ever going to? And I had no idea that, I knew about Red Horse, but I didn't know there was a well drilling unit. And I remember getting there and thinking, this is where I want to go. This is what I'm going to have the opportunity to use what I learned and to see it happen. And to me, it's the greatest thing in the world. Just when they fire up the rig and I throw my hard hat on and it's time to go to work, it's the greatest thing in the world.
And so you start looking for jobs. Did you apply for any drilling jobs or talk to any people about drilling? We don't need to name companies, but what was your experience on that aspect?
I applied to one through USA Jobs, the US Geological, don't need to. They didn't actually get back to me. I'm not calling them out. I'm not saying it's bad. I applied for a USGS job. And USA Jobs is, it's improved, but it's a very slow system with applications. So who knows? They might not have even had a chance to look at it yet. Or, so I wasn't calling anybody out on that one. I just want to make that clear. I did talk to another company. An individual that had, I guess they have some operations over here on the West Coast. And, one of the things I experienced transitioning into being a civilian and then a reservist was, and part of it, we're going through hard times. So I understand that, but I started applying for jobs 6 months before I got out of active duty. So this was before the pandemic even happened. And I spoke to an individual in a drilling company that, I told him my plan, that it was important to me to continue to be a reservist because I recognize that officers in this career field are very few. They're always in need of civil engineering officers. That I always wanted to maintain the ability to be there for my country because it was important to me. And this individual told me that wasn't going to work with the drilling industry, and that if I was going to get a job with their company, it wasn't going to work, and we would have to further discuss it. And I actually told Brock that, and he calmed me down because I was very pissed off that that person said that to me. But it's not just in drilling. I experienced that with other companies I talk to. And, you know, it's interesting to see that so many people say that they're supportive of that, you know, the military and being flexible. But that was my experience with that one individual in the drilling industry. So it was kind of an interesting conversation. And
that was a large company.
Fortunately, it was, you know, and like Dave said, you know, it's good that we have this network of people and these friends, because I called Brock and I said, what's the deal? Like, am I going to, you know, it was almost like someone was telling me that you're never going to work in this industry unless you abandon all the rest of your things that are important to you.
I've had guys that were reservists that did 2 active duties in Iraq while he worked for me. And, you know, I was with a relatively large national company at the time, and, you know, we were supportive. So I'm, you know, is it easy? No, but if you want to say that you give a crap about the military, about the United States, about any of that, you can't say, well, unless of course they try to come to work for me. That, you know, that's short-sighted. And I do believe that we have people in this industry, I would like to think anyway, that aren't that short-sighted. So I would hope that, you know, it won't take real long for you to find a suitable job in this career that you can flourish in. And
You know, Brock made an interesting point when I made that phone call to him. He said, you know, he said, you will find a place. You know, the industry is, trust me, that's not the opinion of the entire industry when it comes to your reserve service. He said, now, is it going to be easy for you to do both? No, you're going to have to work hard, and that's okay, because both things are important to me. You know, I'm the type of person that I enjoy working hard, and at the end of the week, when I go to have my craft beer, I am very happy with it because I have worked hard all week.
We've had some craft beer on this podcast before. One of us got a delivery last time we were talking to Derek Good in the middle of the podcast. So as Derek Good and I were still sitting at work, and, you know, he opens a beer and starts drinking. I'm like, you rotten SOB. Anyway.
You know, and that's full circle with not with the craft beer, but, you know, adaptive leadership. You know, knowing the people you want. I want people that I know have aimed higher for, you know, the greater good. If that's, you know, serving in the U.S. military, if that's, you know, volunteering, you know, those things, because that's just good qualities, you know, in a time and universe of lots of characters and bad qualities out there. It's very important to recognize, you know, the good, you know, and I studied, you know, water and theater, right? And I became a director because I didn't like the way my professors and other peers, how they were casting or the things they were choosing for productions, you know? So I took a ton of directing classes and studied John Ford and Michael Bay and all of these different, you know, directors, Tony Scott, you know, and then looking at theater directors, which nobody will know any names of, so I don't have to mention, but, you know, they all had different ways of getting people to where they needed to be, you know, in order to put on a production that is going to be on stage, or, you know, a couple takes and you got to move on to the next piece because of the budget. So, you know, you're working with these people to get them where do they need to be, you know, mentally, physically, with the picture, and then you step away, which is no different than our classroom teaching to drilling, where we have to know there's a point where the production has to happen, the audience has to enjoy it, and we no longer have influence, right? And not getting, I'm envious of the leadership classes you would have gotten to take, and I love the great military minds out there, and that's why I do so many quotes from great leaders in bad situations around the world, for the most part promoting how we become good. And instead, I've leaned on Simon Sinek with Leaders Eat Last, Start With Why, the Infinity Game. Those are all on Audible. My wife tells me that's not really reading, but I enjoy people reading to me. Jack Welch, Winning. He reads that book to you, and I suggest everybody gets that book. Robert Sutton does the No Asshole Rule, and then another book called Good Boss, Bad Boss, and has built his entire, career on looking at what type of leader do you want to be if you're just going to come in and save the day and tell everybody what to do. And Good Boss, Bad Boss, we'll talk about a good boss, and then the next chapter is on the opposite, or the second half of the book. And those are all audiobooks, because I have lots of windshield time, because this industry makes it so you're going a lot of different places, and anybody out there can develop more, can listen, can get there. And I think it's important that adaptive leadership, good leaders, continue to improve themselves, because that's the key. Nobody's ever taking my job, because I'm always going to learn the next thing, and I always want to contribute the next piece. That's what's going to happen.
It's interesting. In an interview, I mentioned to a job interview I was in, I mentioned to the person that was interviewing me that I was pursuing my master's degree, and this person looked at me and said, well, why are you doing that? Do you think that that's something that our company, do you think that that's going to get you bonus points, or do you think that that's doing that is going to progress you in this company? And I said, actually, no, it's just something that I want to do. I want to go and get another degree because I want to keep learning, and it's that thirst for further knowledge that, there's a certain level of knowledge that we all have to get to, as far as education goes. And then it's up to you whether you keep learning or not. And, to me, learning is tied directly to progress. Whatever you do, there's, and I wanted to mention this earlier because, we talked about, the collaborative environment, right? And so part of leadership is, if you want a collaborative environment that you talked about, Brock, is making collaborative decisions, you as the leader have to build that environment. It's not going to establish itself. Because I've been in rooms and it's always been my perspective. I've always been, when I was a second lieutenant, we had a major in our unit that left early because he got selected for another assignment. And there was a 4-month gap, and our commanding officer put me in charge of the largest part of our squadron. So it was, I was a 24-year-old lieutenant, and I was in charge of 400 craftsmen, from carpenters to plumbers, all the craftsmen that did all the preventative maintenance and work on base. I was in charge of all of them. And the first day I walked into the room, with the foreman from each shop, and I said, I'm going to tell you that I'm not the type of person that is the type of person that knows everything. So this is going to be a collaborative environment where I rely on you for information that I need, and you rely on me to cover your backs from the people above us, to always have your back and to have the responsibility. And I always used to say to the troops, was that the person who has the best idea in the room might not be the person with the highest rank on their uniform. But in order to get that idea out of that lowest ranking person, you have to build that environment as a leader. And I've seen it all too often where, I'll go talk to guys after meetings or, whoever, and they'll tell me this idea. And I'll say, well, why didn't you bring that up? And they say, well, I didn't feel like my idea was going to be valued. I don't feel like that they care what I think.
I find myself in meetings, and I want to circle back to what that guy said about, your masters, and I want Dave's input on that too. I find myself in meetings, and mind you, I do work for a very big company, a massive company with multiple tiers too. And I will wrap a meeting, if it's on the phone, if it's on Zoom, if it's in Teams, if it's in the conference room, all socially distanced right now because of this weird virus. I go, after I hear everything that's happened, everything, the plans, we bounce back and forth. I go, what am I missing? What doesn't make sense? There's got to be a piece here. And I'll call somebody out in the middle of the meeting and go, Jay, you've been here before. What could have made this outcome better? And there's many times where it's like you have to ask more discovery questions instead of having that meeting that ends, that then two other people have a side siloed meeting and change the outcome of where we could have gone because they can't handle the collaborative environment. But I spend a lot of time, Charlie Cunningham, vice president of Jeffco at the time, now he's with VacuWorks. I'm going to write about him for Driller coming up, would say, all right, guys, we're at the end of the meeting. We got, 10 minutes left. Is everybody's hearts and heads clear? What else do we need to talk about right now? Is there one more piece? And when he was in the meetings at Jeffco on product development with us, we got more done. When he wasn't there, the second in command would have that siloed meeting off to the side and would change the outcome. And it inevitably negatively impacted how that company went on. Dave, you advocate for a huge, the 150 as a union drilling because we're a small community, right? And we're talking about how great it is being in this small community. From manufacturers to everything that happens in our industry is tiny compared to the rest of the construction industry. And Dave, you're often advocating, you wear many hats and teach many other things because of, how small we are. How do you advocate? How do you continue to promote the drilling aspect when there's so many cool things in your facility that's going on that?
Well, it comes down to, like you said, where's your heart at, right? My heart is in drilling, so and in safety both, which is the two things that I've been put in charge of, right? I facilitate it. I hope I lead from that position. I don't command it, right? There's people above me, but I do facilitate it. I'm the facilitator of both those departments. So the first thing is, like you say, you find out what's important to each department. Right now, we're trying to build the drilling department. I'm putting some more pump stuff, trying to gain equipment. It's not always easy because we are small when you look at compared to everybody else. So for me, I try to make sure anytime it makes sense, I'm in their ear with, hey, this is what, this is. Now, I'm going to be told no a lot, but if you stay in their ear, eventually squeaky wheel, right? And that's kind of where I go with that, is you can only advocate if you're in front of somebody. And it doesn't matter what you're advocating for, right? Trying to promote this industry. Why does this podcast make sense? This podcast makes sense because we want to promote the industry. We want to push it forward. We can only do that if we put people of a like mind in front of the people who hadn't maybe thought the same things we've thought. And then those people who haven't thought it, maybe they wind up contacting us, and they wind up on. And when we steer right now, this is moving in the direction of our original vision. I don't know where it's going to be in a while. You don't know where it's going to be, because other people are going to come in and talk, or maybe other podcasts are going to wind up starting out because of this. But that's it. To advocate for our industry, we have to get out there and do what the other sectors have done better than we have. But it's the same. We've talked about learning from other industries, right? What I learned from the crane industry, from my mentor, Glenn, I use that every chance I can, because they're way ahead of us in the way they're licensed, the way that their safety protocols are, right? They're ahead of the drilling industry. So anytime I can, I gleam on to stuff that they've already learned. We can't be so hard-headed that we can't look and see what can we learn from somebody else. And then where it makes sense, you just need to get in front of the people that can help you. And you need to continue to say, hey, we should be, or we need to be. And I think that's really, why all this came out. It's why this podcast exists.
And you teed it up perfectly for where I want to wrap this up. Jake's situation of an interviewer saying, you think getting a master's degree is going to help promote you within this company, or something this company needs, is exactly what I hear and see as I teach and travel for the drilling industry. And the true answer is yes, because I have a master degree geologist undergrad geologist, did all of that before he was 26. And I ask him questions, and I want him there, and I want to promote him. And if I work for him one day, great. You know what? Because it's the best of the information. And any company that says you think betterment isn't going to make you more promotable is not a company I want to work for. I run from. There's a large pump manufacturer that told me that I couldn't write for Driller anymore. They had a marketing group, exact words. We got a marketing group that does that. We don't need to worry about you doing that stuff too. When I was at Jeffco, there was some blocking that happened about, getting to do articles or webinars or any of that stuff, and this industry, because we work hard, especially where I end up, I'm in hotel rooms by myself. This is Saturday. We've all taken a chunk of our Saturday. We're not on the clock. We're promoting our industry, and we can only promote our industry by them getting smarter. And smarter is getting master's degrees in, construction management, in safety, certified safety professionals. We need more people going out and getting their certified safety professional, certifications. We need people, when they go to do their CEUs, I don't want to walk out after I've wrapped, or I have another class coming up in an hour, and I see 3 guys, sitting in the lobby, hanging out, and you ask, hey guys, why aren't you going? Well, Brock, and this happened to me earlier this year. Well, Brock, they signed my card twice, and I don't need to be in this class because I already got credit for it. That's not the culture. We need drilling projects to become science projects. We need to be able to collaborate. We need to be able to adopt technology. We need betterment. If that's knowing that my colleague or direct report wants to go get his master's, I want to support it. There recently, we had an employee that resigned because he was going to college full time. Nobody came to my office. I had to pull everybody in and say, this will not happen again. Nobody came to me and said, Brock, do you think we can get this guy to work part-time while he's going to college? Because I did college and I worked. And if I can put a guy that worked for the company for 4 or 5 years into a pickup truck at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday to run a part or go pick up a pump or wrap up a job so somebody can go to a softball tournament or work a Saturday or something, because the tribal aspect, the field application aspect is very important for us to learn and practice and continue. We can't replace that, but we can add on top of it master's degrees, going to the 150 on a Saturday and learning the next step on solids control or mud testing, or grabbing a chance to watch a drill EDU, or however you professionally develop, because that's what makes us better. And for some reason, this damn culture, oh, you think you're smarter than me now because you went and listened to an audiobook or you went and did this. That's a water well guy. That's not a professional. That's not a person that wants to be an expert and improve this industry. And I keep saying this, it's September 2020, almost end of September 2020. And in 10 years, we're going to see, right behind me is the groundwater map for the United States. And all of those red dots are way below water level, issues. And the green is the okay zone. And you can see the yellows. And as these states grow, we in the United States will need more water. Globally, in 10 years, we're going to see a big deal there. When we hit 2050 and we're 10.5 billion people, the Jake Fletchers, the Scott Byfields, the students that I get to work with at Western Michigan, or the guys that I've worked with you, Dave, and the 820 guys are going to be 50, 55. In 30 years, I'm going to be 70. I need you guys to be the experts. We need to improve this industry. And hell yes, a master's degree makes you more marketable and makes you able to do, because you're building on everything else. It's this stigma of, oh, you went to college and now you think you deserve this big job. No, but if I'm competent and I've proven myself, and maybe I just ran a 50K with a crew for, how long had you been in active duty Air Force?
5 years. I did 2 on the drilling team.
Okay. So just like that, 2 years active duty on drilling. You're a unicorn, man. I mean, a manly unicorn. You got a beard and stuff, but we don't have those people in this industry right now. All right. I'm off my soapbox.
All right. Well, all I want to end with, right, and I thought about where you were talking, is what our president and business manager said to me. We talked about this podcast, whatever. If it's to promote what you're doing or the industry, do whatever you need to do. And I think that's good advice for anybody, right? Because like you said, it will be not very long, and the wars are going to be about water. Well, let's make sure that we're the ones sitting in the best position.
Without a doubt. And Jake is wearing a NASA t-shirt, if anybody watches the video. Jake's part of the United States Air Force. Dave and I have been talking about Armageddon movie. Our next podcast needs to be about Michael Bay, and I mentioned him earlier because I studied him as a student director. In a press conference about launching the movie Armageddon, a press junket, somebody with like Vanity or Entertainment Weekly goes, this isn't very realistic, Michael. why would you think it's easier to train drillers to be astronauts than it is to train astronauts to be drillers? And he said, shut the blank up. And you can fill it in or you can look for the quote, but it is a kooky movie that anytime it's on, I have to stop and watch. And we need to bring Jake back, and we need to get a geologist on here. And I think we got some NASA contacts, and I think we need to talk about the Armageddon movie. And now, if I've sparked any of your interest out there, if you watch what Bruce Willis says about, I'll be your expert, but I need to bring my own crew. And this is why. It's everything that we should have on a job site. The respect, they got my back. They know when a catastrophic incident happens, this is where we're going to go. And that quote in there before it gets into the craziness of a Michael Bay film is well worth it. So what do you guys think? You think we can put together an Armageddon podcast?
I don't know if it'll be our next one, but we've talked about it. I think it'll, if it's our next one, great. But I think putting together the people to watch it, if we make sure we have everybody that we could say, okay, what about this? And we could play some clips and this, I think that'd be awesome. And really, this is a podcast, we talk about the industry, this or that, but it's got to be fun. Then that sounds like fun to me.
Jake, would you come back?
Oh, I'll always come back and sit here and talk with you guys. It's a pleasure on my Saturday to give up part of my Saturday to do it.
Well, we appreciate you coming out, buddy. I want to thank everybody for this week's. Dave and I have started a new venture on this, the Drillers Tribe. DrillersTribe.com will be likely up and running. And we'll have this podcast on here and some other information. And I love the fact that we're a tribal industry. I embrace it, and I think it'll be a fun place to do it. And I think we should all get drillers tribal tattoos, like barbed wire and drill bits around. I'm never getting a tattoo. I'm terrified of needles, but
I'm not scared of needles, but I'm not a tattoo guy unless it's to connect the dots.
Hey,
we can get fake tattoos.
Here's
those would be sweet.
A fun, interesting fact that Nellis Air Force Base just opened the first tattoo shop on an Army or Air Force base in the United States.
You guys in Nellis love your tattoos. Don't you have baseball cross stitching on your arm?
Yep.
It just looks like copper coat to me from this video angle. So
I've got Charlie too.
Very cool. Very cool. That's what the Drillers Tribe tattoo should be made out of copper coat. That shit isn't coming off anything.
It's
right.
True.
All right, everybody. Thanks. And you'll see more of these podcasts coming out.